Most people think winter kills their potted perennials because of the cold. But truth is, it's not the cold that does it. It's the way the roots freeze, thaw, and dry out over and over again. And if you don't protect them right now, your pots could be full of mushy roots come spring. Let's make sure that doesn't happen to you. Welcome back to the channel where we grow smarter, not harder. If you love plants, live in a cooler zone, or just want to stop wasting money on perennials that don't make it through winter, hit that subscribe button. We've got practical gardening tips week after week that help you save time, save plants, and grow better. All right, let's get into the first root-saving tip. When winter arrives, most gardeners focus on what's falling from the sky, the snow, the sleet, the frost, but very few stop to think about what's coming from below. Let's talk about your patio, your concrete porch, even your back deck. You might think these areas are safe, but during winter, they become cold traps. Surfaces like concrete and stone pull heat away from your plant pots faster than the air does. That means your perennial roots, which are sitting in that pot, are slowly freezing from the bottom up. So, what's the solution? Tip number 1. Elevate your pots. Get them off the ground. This single action can increase your root survival rate by more than 60%, especially in zones 4 to 7, where temperatures regularly dip below freezing. Now you might be wondering, what should I use? You don't need fancy gear. Here are a few simple options. Pot feet. These are small rubber or ceramic risers that sit under your pots. Wooden planks, a couple of 2x4s or thick slats of wood can lift an entire row of pots. Bricks, 2 bricks under each side of the pot, done. Even an old crate turned upside down will work. Just don't use metal stands. They conduct cold and can actually make the problem worse. Now let's talk about plastic pots versus terracotta. Plastic insulates better than terracotta or ceramic. If you're using decorative ceramic pots, especially unglazed ones, they absorb water. And when that water freezes, it expands. That expansion can crack the pot and damage the roots inside. This is especially risky in zones 3 to 6, where you get those freeze-thaw cycles. One day it's 20 degrees, the next it's 40. That cycle is what kills roots in pots more than anything. So here's a bonus tip. If you're using terracotta pots and don't want to move your plants, wrap the pot in burlap or frost cloth and elevate it. This reduces both the downward cold from the ground and the exposure to moisture in the air. And here's something most gardeners don't realize. When your pot sits directly on a frozen surface and then warms slightly during the day, water starts to drain from the soil, but at night it freezes again. That expanding water puts pressure on the roots, compacts the soil, and starts damaging your plant from the inside. Over time, this can lead to root rot, or worse, total plant death by spring. So if you only do one thing this winter, get your pots off the ground. Even a 1-inch lift can change the outcome for your plants. And remember, we're not trying to create a greenhouse. We're trying to create just enough of a buffer to keep the roots stable, the soil from flooding, and the pot from becoming a freezer box. Tip number 2. Wrap your pots like you mean it. Now that your pots are off the ground and out of the cold trap, the next step is to insulate them, and not just with mulch. Because here's what a lot of gardeners do. They toss some mulch on top and assume the job is done. But that doesn't protect the sides of the pot, and in freezing weather, that's where the damage starts. Roots in containers don't have the earth around them to act as insulation. In the ground, temperatures stay steadier, but in a pot, that cold air hits all 4 sides and starts sucking out heat fast. So here's what you do instead. You wrap your pots like you're wrapping them for winter survival, because you are. Start with burlap, frost cloth, old blankets, or even bubble wrap. If you've got a stack of Amazon boxes lying around, the bubble wrap inside those boxes, that'll work just fine. Now here's how to do it right. Step 1, make sure the pot is dry on the outside. Step 2, wrap the pot tightly, covering all sides but leaving the drainage hole open at the bottom. Step 3, secure the wrap with twine, string, or even duct tape if needed. You don't want water getting trapped inside the insulation because wet material will just freeze and create the opposite effect. The goal is to trap the heat that's already in the soil and protect the roots from temperature swings. You don't need to wrap the top of the plant. We're not covering the foliage. We're protecting the root zone, the part that matters most for survival. And if you live in zone 5 or colder, double up on the layers. In those areas, even hardy perennials like hostas or lavender can suffer in containers. In warmer zones like 7 to 9, one wrap is usually enough, especially if your winter is mild. But don't skip this step completely. Even a light frost can do hidden damage over time, especially during unexpected cold snaps. Now let's talk about materials. Burlap is a gardener's best friend. It's breathable, natural, and holds up well. Frost cloth is great too, especially if you already use it on your raised beds or row covers. Old towels or moving blankets also work if you're in a pinch. Some gardeners in colder parts of Michigan, Minnesota, or even southern Ontario go as far as placing their pots inside storage bins lined with straw. It may sound extreme, but in -10 degrees, that could be the only thing between your plant and the compost pile. And here's a little secret. If you add a layer of dry leaves or pine needles between the pot and the wrap, you'll boost insulation even more. Just make sure everything stays dry. If moisture gets in, it can freeze and cause more harm than good. One viewer from Alberta, Canada, told me they lost 5 out of 7 container perennials one year, all because they skipped this step. But after wrapping their pots with frost cloth and adding a layer of straw, they kept every single plant alive the next winter, even in -15. Now that's a win. You might be asking, should I insulate plastic pots too? Yes, but plastic holds heat a bit better than clay. Still, if your pot is smaller than 12 inches wide, it cools down fast. The smaller the pot, the more important this step becomes. Big pots act like small raised beds. Small pots act like ice cube trays. So if you've got compact pots with things like lavender, thyme, coral bells, or even daylilies in them, those definitely need wrapping. And here's another mistake to avoid. Don't push your pots up against a wall and wrap them too tightly. You want air to circulate. If there's no airflow and the wrap traps moisture, you could encourage mold or mildew to grow right on the container. The rule is simple: insulate without suffocating. So now you've got your pots lifted off the ground and wrapped snugly for winter. You've cut off that deep ground cold, you've blocked the wind chill, but there's one more thing you can do to lock in protection. And before we'll get to that next one, hit that subscribe button. Tip number 3. Cluster and shelter your pots. There's one more layer of protection that makes a huge difference, especially when the temperatures drop fast and the wind picks up. That's where clustering comes in. Let's be clear. A single pot sitting out in the open is exposed on all sides. Cold wind can blast it from every direction, drawing out warmth faster than anything. Even with wrapping, that wind will find a way in. But when you group your pots together, side by side, they protect each other. It's kind of like a huddle. Plants sharing warmth, shielding one another from the wind, and creating a more stable mini-climate. This is a method that commercial growers have used for decades. In large outdoor nurseries from Ohio to Oregon, they don't leave pots spaced out in winter. They cluster them, wrap them, and tuck them close to wind-blocking structures. And their survival rates go way up. Here's how you can do it in your backyard. Start by moving your potted perennials close to a wall. A brick wall, wood fence, or shed works great, even the side of your house. Walls absorb heat during the day and slowly release it at night, just enough to raise the ambient temperature by a few degrees. And in winter, a few degrees can mean the difference between a sleeping plant and a dead one. If you're in zone 4, 5, or 6, where those icy winds roll in regularly, this is a must. But even if you're in zone 7 or 8, where winters are milder, a sudden cold snap can still cause damage, especially to container plants that don't have soil insulation. Once your pots are near a wall or sheltered spot, push them tightly together. Tall pots in the back, shorter ones in front. This not only helps with wind protection, but keeps them from toppling over in strong gusts. You can also use natural wind breaks, like a line of straw bales or even evergreen branches. If you trimmed your arborvitae, spruce, or pine trees recently, don't toss the branches. Lay them around the base of your clustered pots. They'll act like a natural barrier, reducing airflow and holding in warmth. And here's something few gardeners think to do. Use old tomato cages or plant supports to create a circular fence around the cluster. Then you can fill the space with dry leaves or straw. It creates an insulated little pod where your pots stay warmer, and the air doesn't whip through. This tip comes straight from a grower I know in upstate New York who has overwintered rosemary, salvia, and even small hydrangeas in pots, outdoors, with this exact setup. Now I know what you might be thinking. What if I don't have space near a wall? No problem. You can still cluster your pots together in the middle of your patio or yard. Just surround the cluster with something. An old pallet, some straw bales, even large bags of potting mix or mulch you haven't used yet. Use whatever you've got to create a ring around the group and block the wind. If it helps, think of it like building a tiny village for your plants. Each pot is a house, and the cluster is the community. The stronger the community, the warmer it stays through the winter. And before we move to the next tip, let me remind you, if you're enjoying these kinds of practical, no-fluff gardening tips, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Every week, we drop new advice that helps you grow smarter, save time, and keep your plants thriving, even in tough seasons. If you're already subscribed, thank you. I'm glad you're here. Tip number 4. Water before the freeze, not after. Now this one surprises a lot of gardeners. You'd think watering before a freeze is the last thing you want to do. But in reality, it could save your plants, especially the roots in containers. Let's break it down. When soil is dry going into a cold snap, it cools down faster. Dry soil has more air pockets, which don't hold heat well. But when the soil is slightly moist, not soggy, just damp, it holds on to warmth longer and slows down the freezing process. It's like the difference between a sponge and a rock. A damp sponge takes longer to freeze than a dry one. Your potting mix acts the same way. So here's what you do. Keep an eye on the forecast. When you see that temperatures are going to drop below freezing in the next 24 to 48 hours, give your potted perennials a deep watering. Early in the day, not at night, not late afternoon, early morning is best. That gives time for any excess water to drain out and prevent soggy conditions overnight, which could turn to ice and damage the roots. This is especially important in zones 4 through 7, where those sharp cold fronts can come on fast and catch gardeners off guard. But even if you're in zone 8 or 9 and you're growing something borderline hardy like rosemary or lemon balm, it still matters. Now let's be clear, I'm not saying you need to water your potted plants every time it gets chilly. What I'm saying is, don't let the soil stay bone dry when a hard freeze is coming. Moist soil is your friend in winter prep. And here's a mistake people often make. They stop watering altogether once the temps drop and fall. They figure the plant isn't growing, so it doesn't need water. But even dormant roots need a little moisture to stay alive. If the soil dries out completely and then freezes solid, you'll often find root death by early spring, even if the top of the plant looks fine. I've seen this happen over and over, especially with things like Heuchera, Coreopsis, and Salvia in containers. They look like they're just sleeping. Then spring comes, and nothing comes back. So here's a quick checklist for watering before winter. Water when a freeze is expected in the next day or two. Do it in the morning, not late in the day. Make sure pots are draining well. Never let pots sit in standing water. And only water if the soil is dry or almost dry. Don't soak already wet pots. And while we're here, let's talk about soil quality. If your potting mix is old, compacted, or holds too much water, it could freeze into a solid block. That puts pressure on the roots and damages the cell walls, especially in young and tender perennials. So this might be the right time, before winter sets in, to top dress your pots with compost or worm castings. This does two things. One, it helps the soil retain moisture without becoming waterlogged. And two, it slowly feeds the plant over the winter months, especially on those milder days when soil temps creep above freezing. Gardeners in Kentucky, West Virginia, and parts of the Midwest swear by this. A light compost layer in late fall has helped them bring back plants year after year, even after deep freezes. And here's a bonus move. Add 1-inch layer of pine bark, shredded leaves, or many pine cones on top of your potting soil. It acts like a natural blanket, keeping moisture in and temperature swings down. Just be sure to remove it once spring temps stay above 45 degrees at night so you don't accidentally smother your new growth. Before we move to the next tip, let me say this. Most gardeners lose their potted perennials in winter because they either let the soil dry out too long, or they let it get soggy, freeze solid, and suffocate the roots. Both are avoidable. All it takes is a quick check of your pots every 10 to 14 days in late fall and early winter. Stick your finger in the soil. If it feels dry 2 inches down, give it a little water. That one habit could be the reason your perennials come back stronger next year. Tip number 5. Protect the pot itself. You've raised your pots off the ground. You've wrapped them up. You've clustered them together in a safe spot. You've even watered them at the right time. But what if your pot doesn't survive the winter? Because here's the truth most people overlook. It's not always the plant that fails. Sometimes the pot gives out first. And when the pot cracks or splits, it exposes roots, destroys insulation, and can wipe out everything you've worked for. Let's talk about how to stop that from happening. Certain pot materials just aren't built for freezing conditions. At the top of the risky list, terracotta and unglazed ceramic. They absorb water. That water gets into the walls of the pot, and when temperatures drop below 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 Celsius, that water freezes, expands, and boom, your pot is split down the side. Even a small crack can be a big problem because the moment that crack opens, cold air floods the root zone, soil starts spilling out, and by the time spring rolls around, your perennial is either dried out, exposed, or completely dead. So here's what to do about it. If you live in zones 3 to 7, where hard freezes are common, try switching to frost-resistant containers. That includes thick plastic pots, fiberglass planters, resin or composite pots, double-walled containers. These materials hold up better under pressure. They don't absorb moisture, and they don't crack as easily when the freeze-thaw cycle hits hard. But if you absolutely love your terracotta pots and don't want to move the plants out, no problem. Here's how to protect the pot itself. First, wrap the pot all the way down to the base. Don't stop at the root zone. That outer shell needs insulation too. Use burlap, old blankets, or closed-cell foam insulation if you have it. Even a layer of cardboard wrapped in plastic to keep it dry can work as a barrier. Next, keep the pot dry. Terracotta only cracks when moisture inside the pot wall freezes, so the drier you keep it, especially during sudden cold snaps, the safer it'll be. Here's a tip a gardener from Colorado Springs shared. She places her terracotta pots under a covered patio, wraps them, and adds a piece of plastic sheeting underneath to keep them off the wet concrete. She hasn't lost a single container in 5 years, despite regular freezes in the teens. Now let's talk about plastic pots. Plastic handles cold better than clay, but it has its own problem: brittleness. In freezing temps, especially after years in the sun, plastic pots can get stiff and crack from even small bumps or shifts. So if your pots are more than 3 to 4 years old, give them a good inspection before winter. Look for thin walls, brittle edges, or stress lines. If they feel stiff or start to flake when you bend the rim, it's time to replace them or double insulate them. One trick that works great: place a smaller plastic pot inside a larger one and fill the gap between them with dry leaves, straw, or even shredded newspaper. That double-walled system adds a huge layer of insulation, protects both the pot and the plant, and you don't need to spend a dime. Now, what about ceramic pots? They're beautiful, no doubt about that, but even glazed ceramics can crack in cold climates, especially if the glaze has hairline fractures or isn't designed for outdoor winter use. If you're in zone 6 or colder, I recommend moving glazed ceramic pots into a garage, shed, or even an unheated sunroom if possible. If not, wrap them tightly and don't let them sit in standing water. That's what causes the most damage. And finally, let's touch on drainage, because it matters more in winter than in summer. If your pot doesn't drain well, water pools in the bottom. That water freezes, expands, and not only cracks the pot, but also creates ice blocks that choke your roots. So before the freeze hits, check every drainage hole. Make sure nothing is blocked. If water isn't running out freely, fix it. Add more gravel, tilt the pot slightly, or clear any debris stuck in the base. One small action now can prevent a major loss later. Bottom line: protecting your pot is protecting your plant. Think of your pot like a winter jacket. It needs to be dry, layered, and built to handle the cold. If it fails, everything inside is exposed. Tip number 6. Move them to a microclimate. When temperatures really drop and your pots are already lifted, wrapped, clustered, and protected, there's still one more thing that can tip the odds in your favor. That's finding a microclimate. What's a microclimate? It's a small, protected spot in your yard where conditions are just a little milder than the rest of your garden. It might be warmer, less windy, better drained, or just more stable overall. And that's exactly where your vulnerable pots should go. Now, this doesn't mean you need to move all your pots indoors or build a greenhouse. Not at all. You're just looking for areas around your home or garden that naturally stay a bit warmer through winter. Think about the south-facing side of your house, a corner near your garage, under a covered patio, next to a fence that blocks the wind, near your compost bin, which gives off a little heat. Even moving your pot 5 feet from one location to another can raise the average temperature by 3 to 5 degrees, and that can make a big difference, especially in zones 5 to 7. One of the best microclimates is along the south-facing wall of a brick house. Bricks absorb heat during the day and slowly release it overnight. If you place your pots there, wrapped and grouped, you're giving them the best possible shot at surviving harsh winter nights. A gardener I spoke with in southern Wisconsin had a few potted peonies and helleberries on the edge of her deck. She lost them 2 years in a row, but the third year she did 2 things differently. She moved the pots just 6 feet closer to her basement wall, where the furnace vent kept the air just a little warmer, and she grouped them near her compost tumbler, which gave off low but steady heat. Every single plant survived. Now let's talk about garages and sheds. If you have an unheated garage, this is a great option, especially for less hardy perennials like rosemary, agapanthus, or fuchsias in pots. Just make sure they still get some light and airflow, and always check the temperature in that garage. You don't want it to drop below 20 degrees Fahrenheit inside. If it does, you might still need to wrap your pots inside the garage for extra insulation. Cold frames and cupboard porches can also become makeshift microclimates, especially if they're blocked from the wind. If you're in the Pacific Northwest, where temperatures tend to stay above 20 degrees but the air is damp, a microclimate also helps reduce moisture stress and root rot. The goal isn't just warmth, it's stability. Now, if you're in zones 8 and 9, your winters may be mild, but you still get occasional dips. Moving pots under a roof or closer to the house can prevent sudden cold shock, especially for borderline hardy perennials like geraniums or lemon verbena. If lifting your pots is difficult, no worries. You can still build a microclimate around them. Use straw bales, storage bins, or even old furniture cushions to block wind. Create a windbreak. Add a ground cover like a rug or cardboard sheet, and you'll raise the temperature just enough to keep those roots steady. Remember, cold doesn't usually kill overnight. It's the stress of freezing, thawing, freezing again. That's what does the damage. A stable, slightly warmer spot breaks that cycle and gives your plant the chance to rest through winter instead of fighting to survive every single night. Microclimates are your best friend in this kind of winter prep. They cost nothing, they don't require electricity or grow lights, and once you learn how to find them, you can use them for years to come. So, we've covered 6 powerful tips. And if you've made it this far, you're not just trying to save your perennials, you're setting yourself up to grow stronger, smarter, and with way fewer losses this coming spring. And hey, if this video has helped you in any way, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. I share real gardening tips just like this every week, especially for folks like you who want their garden to thrive even when the weather doesn't cooperate. So hit subscribe, turn on the bell so you don't miss the next one, and thank you for growing with me. Tip number 7. Don't let them wake too early. Now this one's a little sneaky because it doesn't happen in winter. It happens at the very end of winter, when the worst seems over, but the real risk is just beginning. It's called false spring. That one warm week in February, the one sunny stretch in early March, temps rise into the 50s, maybe even the 60s. You get excited, the birds are chirping, and guess what? So do your plants. Your potted perennials start waking up, they push out tender new shoots, maybe even a bud or two. And then, boom, another hard frost. That tender new growth? Gone, burned, damaged beyond repair. And that early wake-up drains energy your plant needs to survive the final stretch of cold. This happens all over the Midwest, Northeast, mountain regions, and even parts of the UK and Canada. Late frosts can show up as late as April, especially in zones 3 to 6. So here's what to do. As winter ends and you start seeing new growth on your potted plants, don't rush to unwrap them. Leave their insulation in place just a little longer, especially at night. You can loosen it during the day if things are warming up, but recover in the evening until nighttime temps stay consistently above 40 degrees Fahrenheit. If your pot is unwrapped and a sudden cold snap comes in, use frost cloth, an old sheet, or even a cardboard box overnight to cover the top growth. And if your plant does start waking up too early, resist the urge to fertilize. Feeding it during that time can push it to grow even more, which makes it more vulnerable to the next frost. Instead, focus on stability, not speed. Keep things slow and steady. Let the weather settle before encouraging new growth. This one small move, delaying the wake-up, gives your perennials a smoother, safer transition into spring. And that brings us to your bonus tip. Something you can do right now before the deep cold sets in. Before you wrap everything up, literally and figuratively, take a minute to check the base of your plants. Tip the pot slightly. Look for roots coming out of the drainage holes. If they're circling the bottom or packed in tight, it might be time to gently loosen them just a little. You don't need to repot. Just use your fingers to break up any heavy root-bound sections and top off the pot with fresh soil, compost, or worm castings. This gives your plant a better environment to rest in during winter. And when spring comes, it'll have room to stretch and grow again. Think of it like fluffing the pillow before your plant goes to sleep. It may be small, but it makes a big difference. And if you've got bags of compost lying around, now's the time to use them. Just a thin layer across the top of each pot adds nutrients, improves moisture retention, and protects the surface from sudden freezes. Do this once before winter really sets in, and your plants will thank you come spring. Let's go over what you've learned today. 7 essential tips to protect your potted perennials this winter. Lift your pots off the ground to stop the cold from creeping in from below. Wrap them with insulation to hold warmth and block icy winds. Cluster and shelter them near walls or fences to create shared protection. Water before a freeze to stabilize soil temperature, not after. Protect the pots themselves, especially terracotta and ceramic. Move them to a microclimate. Just a few feet can make a big difference. Delay early wake-ups to avoid frost burn and wasted energy. And your bonus tip, refresh the roots and soil before tucking them in for the season. Now listen, if you've ever lost a plant in winter and thought, what did I do wrong? These steps are your answer. This video wasn't just about keeping plants alive. It was about giving you control, confidence, and clarity in a season where a lot of gardeners feel lost. And if that sounds like the kind of help you want more of, hit that subscribe button right now. No fluff, no hype, just real tested gardening tips every week, for every season, for every zone, and always delivered in a way that makes sense. Subscribe, turn on the bell, and stick around, because winter's just beginning, and we've got so much more to grow. Thanks for listening. See you in the next one.